Hey everybody, Bobby here, and welcome to Draw Sessions. So today's lesson is all about shading, and it is a redo of an older video I had posted years ago, and I just decided to update a couple techniques that I've been doing and show you an updated drawing. When you're looking at a creature like this, you're probably thinking, wow, that's a lot of detail. I can't put that much detail in it because I don't have that patience. I'm here to tell you that with this specific shading technique that I'm going to teach you, you can achieve a lot of detail by putting it on top of that shading. Now, let me explain. So first of all, the equipment that I'm using, this is a Moleskine sketch pad, and I'm using a Faber-Castell 4B pencil. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need 5, 6, 7 different pencils. I use 2 at most. So I use this black Prismacolor for the darks, if I want to get like a black eyeball or black teeth, antenna, etc. on some of the creatures I draw. And then I have the 4B, which personally for me offers just the right amount of dark and light and also softness of the graphite. All right, so this creature has a lot of detail inside of it. How did I get that? So let's go over some shading techniques that you can apply to your own drawings to make anything you draw more realistic. So I'm just going to duplicate that arm that you see on the left. All right, so whenever I start a sketch, notice how I hold the pencil. There's a lot of real estate up here. I don't grip it all the way to the front because the farther you grip it up front, the more detail you want to put. Okay, so hold it back a little bit, keep loose with it. And I've gone over this in some older videos too. So I'm just going to get an outline. After you do this, the first step in making good shading is making sure that the pencil is sharp. So notice how my pencil actually is sharp. The other thing is you want to make sure that you can physically turn your sketchbook comfortably. So a lot of times when we shade, we tend to hold the pencil like this and then turn our wrist and try to get a good angle and then turn it again and get a good angle, but the paper stays still. You want to use the turning and the rotating of the paper to your advantage. And what I mean by that is everybody listening right now who enjoys drawing has that one comfort spot that your arm likes to sit in order to make good looking lines. And if you tweak that movement, the lines don't look good anymore and it's kind of uncomfortable. They don't feel good when you go from thick to thin and the line quality is just not good. So what I like doing is I like holding the pencil like this. So you can see that it's about in the middle of the pencil. So I got my middle finger, my thumb, and then I have my ring and index finger resting there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this like so, all right? And then I'm going to apply one layer of shading going across that entire area, like so. So you'll notice that when I'm doing this, this pencil that I'm holding is way, way, way in the back. It's pinching it at the very end. So it allows me to point rather comfortably in the direction that I want all the strokes to go. Now when you look at the strokes, you're going to see some gaps in between each line. Whenever you shade, this is going to take a little bit of practice. Whenever you shade, you're going to have to go over that same area more than once. But the trick is to do it a minimum of 3 different directions. So what does that mean? It means that when I'm done shading in one direction, so trying my best to keep all of the strokes close together so there are no gaps in between, I'm going to take this paper and I'm going to turn the entire sketchbook like that, so that when I apply shading again, I'm going to hold the pencil the same way. I'm going to use my pinky to guide my hand across the paper like this. You can see how my hand moves. This also helps prevent you from smearing all of the lovely graphite that you might have put on your drawings. Ever notice how some people can keep a clean sketchbook and some can't? This is exactly why. You keep your palm off of it. Your palm is dirty. You got oil on there, you pick up graphite, then you smear the graphite across it. It's bad. So direction number 2. Now remember, I said 3 different directions. So now that I'm doing this, I'm not pushing harder. I'm keeping the same pressure that I did in my first pass. Okay, so now I have directions going down diagonally to the left, and then I have it going down diagonally to the right. So that means that if I turn it one more time, like this, so now it's completely upside down. Experiment with it. Like, it's going to be different for everybody. And then you're going to shade across this direction. Now notice how I'm going outside of the lines. This is the fun part. It doesn't matter if you go outside of the nice lines that you drew, because that's what the eraser's for. You can always erase on the outside and you'll have something clean. Now when I look at this and I'm starting to close the gaps, 3 directions gave me a pretty nice smooth coating right there. But me being a perfectionist, an artist being perfectionist in general, I'm not satisfied with that yet. So when you look at a sketch like this, you're probably wondering, like, how long did this take me? So this particular creature, if I were to do it in one sitting, took about 8 hours. But I like to sketch in 20-minute intervals, maybe an hour interval. I'm going to look at this shading that I did next to the arm, and I'm going to hit it again at a different angle that I did before. Okay, and it looks like direction number 4 might be doing the trick. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So you can see that there's like a really nice coating start to happen. And I'm going to go over it again at a different angle. And then maybe across it, because I have not gone that direction yet. So this is pass number, what, 5? There we go. Now look how smooth that is. Now here's the fun part. We are going to take an eraser and make sure, it doesn't matter what eraser you use. This is like some cheap eraser I got at Walgreens. And I'm just going to erase on the outside of this just to clean it up a little bit. One of the few times that you should actually use an eraser. All right, here's a little trick for you. Don't, or you could blow some air across the page, and then whatever's left over, you take the eraser and pick it up. You want to avoid, as much as possible, running your hand across it, because even if it's brief, okay, maybe you can get away with it with your fingernail, but even if it's brief, the oils in your hand will go on the paper. All right, so remember, we're in this to keep a clean sketch, and we don't want to start spreading a lot of oils and other stuff from our skin. It's gross. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the edge of the arm. I'm going to make sure that I'm sitting comfortably here. And I'm going to control the pencil strokes a little bit more. Now notice that I'm going in one direction again. That's the key, folks, to good shading. You want to go in one direction and cover an entire space before you switch. Okay, so it's starting to look pretty good now, at least to put some other details on there. So I'm just going to darken the outside line like that. Now, the way I'm doing this is I'm gently running the pencil across the page like that, and I'm pushing harder in the middle of the stroke and then releasing the pressure, so like that. So that when I shade, I'm actually doing it faster. And you'll get used to it the more times you do it. Now, depending on the angle of your hand, like I usually hold my pencil like this whenever I shade, and I try to do it away from the actual drawing. So you see how much space is from the subject matter that I'm drawing to my hand. There's a lot going on. I'm not all up on it like this, trying to put in detail or whatever. No, it's way back here, just so I'm not obstructing my view, because then I can run over top of it and darken any areas that I want, and I can see everything. Okay, so when we go back over here, I'm starting to think of some muscle definition. Now, I'm not going to copy this arm directly. I'm just going to alter it a little bit, just draw another arm, but maybe put different kinds of muscles in there. Whenever you shade, make sure that you start lightly and you work your way to dark. You never want to start dark immediately. because what you put down is not coming up unless you erase the heck out of it. By that time, and any time that we erase, it actually eats up the natural coating of the paper. And if you out there are familiar with moleskin paper, it's naturally smooth, but there is a coating that's put on there. So every time you erase it, it gets a little rougher in that spot. So then when you try to shade back on top of that, it doesn't look good and it doesn't feel right. Okay, so now I'm starting to put in some shadow. And I'm still holding the pencil relatively loose. I want to darken near the line because as light comes around the sketch in that direction, you're going to have a core shadow that runs across this side and this side, especially if the light's hitting it from above. Okay, so now that we are starting to build up some areas, I'm going back over the original coating of shading that I did. And this is when you start to notice that layering really comes in handy. Because now, if I were to put little details in here, it has that shading in the background to color it in naturally. So here's what I mean. If I wanted to sketch a vein going across this arm, like a really big, thick vein, all I would have to do is shade the shadow of the vein on the side of it. Okay, and then on the other side of the vein, you start to see the indication of it. And now I'm going to do it a little bit more. I'm going to shade a little bit more. And now you're really starting to see that vein go across the surface. The cool thing is, because I applied the 3, 4, or 5 different directions of value before I put all the detail down, that value is filling in the gaps to no matter what I'm drawing. So that if I want to put like a random wrinkle over here, like that, it already looks more realistic because it's on top of that value already. So if I wanted to put in multiple wrinkles at different angles to make it look like some skin is folding there maybe, or it's just old, the tone of the paper, the tone that I put down is already helping me. So now I'm just going to darken some of the areas where the skin is folding, and then I'm just going to lightly shade around the dark part. There we go, to make it look like light is bending around the edge. And all of a sudden, as you start to layer, you start to realize, man, there's actually some depth that's happening in here. And I've barely put in any effort. It's just a matter of holding the pencil lightly and comfortably so that you can perform or that you can lay down the type of lines that you want. Because, I mean, everybody listening right now, we all hold our pen and pencils differently. Okay, so some people hold it like this, some people hold it like this. I've seen folks just hold it like this, like very strange. But hey, whatever gets the job done, right? So now I'm just starting to add in some value, maybe with some muscle tone. Since this is a forearm, we're going to see more muscle tone. And I'm putting in shadow. I'm not actually putting in single lines. I'm just putting in values where I think light is going to be bending around tendons and muscle. And all of a sudden, you start to see this arm come to life. I like that vein. I think I'm going to add another one coming off of that one. So notice that I'm just shading around that vein. I'm not actually drawing the vein in per line. So I need to be careful of that to make sure that value right there flows into the other side of the arm nicely. Right, like that. Now down here, let's just pretend there's like another joint. So I'm starting to put some value in very lightly, and I'm going over top of the value that I already put on there. And then I'm going to turn my page again, my sketchbook, and I'm going to go in a different direction. So I'm doing exactly what I did before, just at a smaller scale. Direction number 1. Okay, now I'm going to do direction number 2. I'll hold my paper down a little bit so it doesn't bounce up and down. Okay, that's direction number 2. And then we're going to do direction number 3. So this is going to be a newer direction, so I'm just going to put it slightly upside down here. Now, my hand is going to sit on top of my sketch that I did, the detailed creature, but I'm going to make sure that I don't slide my hand as nearly as much as I would if this was just a white background. There we go. Okay, let's turn it back. All right, so that's the power of turning your sketchbook. Now, I can put in even more detail. And this is where dark to light lines really come into play. So the better you are at applying pressure with your pencil, the easier this is going to be. Since this vein is wrapping around the edge like this, I'm just going to darken it a little bit more. Maybe put in some, because I have some bumps right here just to indicate some texture. Because it's a creature, you know, like why not? Just make it weird and alien looking. So I'm just going to do the same here. I'm just going to apply some different bumps and maybe skin protrusions here and there. And then shade around it. So I'm not just going to have a black speck sit on a lightly tan arm. I'm going to shade just a little bit. Give it some depth. Give it some realism. Right, like that. And notice how I'm not spending too much time on per area. It's just all about bouncing from one spot to the other, trying to make it as cool as possible. So right here, this is one technique that you could use in order to make some good shading. There we go. So let's make this sucker pretty veiny. Let's just give it like a random spike out here or something, just so we can darken it, and I'll show you the technique of making it dark. So I've just indicated with some very simple graphite inside here, and I'm going to take the black Prismacolor, so this one. Notice how this one's sharp too. And I'm going to make this super dark. All right, like that. And now, look how I'm holding it. Because I want to get details now, I'm going to do circles. Light circles. And I'm going to run it right into the graphite that I have. Because this is not graphite, this is wax. Black Prismacolor is wax. So a trick that I like to do, and I teach my students, is whenever you have a complete drawing like this, take a black Prismacolor very, very, very lightly. Run it across your entire pencil sketch in one direction. And then you're going to turn the page like this, and you're going to do it again. And then you're going to do it again. I would do it in 6 to 10 different passes. Because what that'll do is not only will it give it better texture, the wax of your black Prismacolor holds down the graphite so it won't smear. So I can do this and nothing smears. So then you don't have to erase everything constantly. Because you know, like older sketchbooks that are several months old, maybe in a year old, you look back on it, you open the page up, and it's like, man, everything just smeared and I don't know how to get rid of it. Like, it does, it kind of sucks. So I'm going to take the black Prismacolor again, and I'm just going to do some small, tiny circles. If you're wondering, like, why circles? Because it covers gaps in the page way faster than straight lines. One, you don't zigzag your pencil strokes, because then you don't have white space in there. A circle kind of overlaps what you just did, and by overlapping, it fills in all the gaps that you might have missed. So it's like you go over an area twice in one swoop. Like this. And then this is when you take the graphite again, lightly, and you're just going to go over the wax, and you're going to try to fade that into the graphite. Like so. So the other thing that some of you may have noticed already, other than erasing on the side of the arm, notice how I have not erased one thing. And that's what I want you guys to get in the habit of doing, is that you should keep erasing at a minimum. What ends up happening is that you start designing by eraser instead of designing by your hand or your mind. And you definitely don't want to do that. It's easier said than done. I get it. yeah, especially when you start a drawing and you want it to be awesome the first go around, and it's just not turning out the way you want. So you start erasing it, and then you try to draw over the area with the eraser. That doesn't look good, and then you just kind of screwed up your drawing. So you want to erase at a minimum. So right now I'm just going over the original coding of value that I put down because it's taking care of itself. So you notice like all of the details that I'm putting in here are sitting on top of a really nice shaded area. So like if you look at the muscles in the forearm and the bicep right here, and like the tricep and the shoulder area, all of that was on top of a coating that I gave it. So I just kind of push harder when I want a darker area to show. So for example, let's say I want to do something up here in this area that's fading off. All right, well, I'm not really satisfied with how it's looking. So I'm going to put a little bit more value in it. I'm just going over different directions again. There we go. And then maybe one more. I'm going to hold my pencil slightly more secure. It's going to be in the middle of the pencil this time. All right. That's looking good. Notice how smooth that got. Okay, so let's say I want to put in a couple lumps in there. Maybe there's like the indication of muscles beginning. I'm doing little circles, and I'm pushing harder where I want a bigger shape to pop out of the skin from. Okay, and then maybe over here. So down here, I want to get some pretty cool looking tendons. So I'm just going to push harder and then release the pressure pretty quickly. There we go. All right. So, today's lesson wasn't very long. I'll have longer lessons in coming videos, but a couple things I do want to mention before we wrap up today's shading lesson is one, check out the link in the picture or in the video because I have a time-lapse video where it's a 40 or 50-minute drawing condensed into about a 10-minute sketch. So you're going to see in real time and time-lapse how I approach all my shading, how many times I turn the page and all of that. So it's pretty fun to watch. The second thing that I want to mention is I'm running a creature design workshop. So it's a 6-week workshop where you sign up for it. We have our own Discord and everything. And I go over some creature design techniques that I've been using throughout the years, working with Snail Games USA, Netflix. It begins July 1st. So if you're really interested, just write in the comments. You can email me, bobbyrebholz@gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer you and any questions you might have, give you some syllabus breakdown. We meet twice a week on Discord to talk about the sketches. I give you a little demo, some critiques. But if you want to see the time-lapse version, just click on the video that's showing up on the screen, and I'll be happy to post more of those in the future. But thanks again, folks. Hopefully this helped. You can apply this technique to anything you draw, and with some practice, you could get some pretty nice, encouraging results even within a week. Okay, this is going to take time. You won't be able to achieve this overnight, okay? But you will be able to achieve the foundation in order to do it in a very short amount of time. All right, just keep the pencil sharp, keep the erasers away, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks so much.